I want to check and see if my voice is clear enough. Are you able to hear me all right? Yeah, very good, thank you. I want to go right into giving a brief discussion about the theme of this week's day-long retreat. It's about creativity, which seems like a really wonderful thing. It is a wonderful thing. Creativity is dear and delightful. It's so precious to us. And yet, we hear that there is something beyond creativity, something beyond anything that we ourselves can create. In reading the Nibbana sermons, Bhante Jnanananda develops the theme of what's called Manjana, or Manjati, which she translates as me thinking. So this would be like in Old English, say, methinks it's a glorious day today. That's St. Patrick's Day. Oh, methinks happy St. Patrick's Day. Bhikkhu Bodhi translates manjana as conceiving. And another way that we often see it translated is as imagining. And it just I've been investigating and reflecting on what this really means. What is happening when the mind does this imagining or conceiving or me thinking, which is a distinctive part of our mental process. And I want to, I got the idea because in English, conceiving, one of the definitions of conceiving is to come up with an idea. So, for example, if you want to build a house or buy a house, they say that the first stage of the process is imagining the house that you would like to have. And so you could imagine, without worrying about the budget or anything else, just imagine what the house would be like, all the things you'd like to see in the house. We've done this with our monastery. We started an imagination process, and you'd have to triple the size of our monastery to put in all the different things that people imagine could be happening within these physical structures, like having a sewing room and having a carpentry workshop and having an exercise room and having a comfortable and very quiet separated lodgings for the visitors, and having a place for the residents, and so on and so on. So there's this imagining process, and then there's another further step of creativity that has to do with bringing your imagination up against the constraints of reality, and then finding the solution to cause your imagined thing to become a reality, in which case you will have created the house or created something. This is sort of similar to another Pali word, which will be much more familiar to most of the Pali students, most of the Buddhist students. If you have studied dependent origination, you will have heard a different term, which is called sankhara, which is sometimes called conditions or conditional formations, sometimes called a mental formation, sometimes called a volitional formation. So what conditions is referring to, one idea of it is, in the most general way, because of this, that happens. Because of the arising of this, that arises. Because of the existence of this, that exists. Because of the cessation of this, that ceases. In a more specific application, sankhara is referring to the particular causation that's involved with karma. What causes beings to be born in the various realms of existence? They're born in those, whatever type of birth they take, because of the previous karma that they accumulated. And the karma came about because of their intentional actions. So if we undertake intentionally doing something, that action will have a result. If the intention is wholesome, the result, when it comes to its fruition, would be pleasant. If the intention is unwholesome or unskillful, the result, when it comes to fruition, would be painful. And if the intention is in between, not grounded in any kind of desire or aversion, but an intention that's grounded in equanimity, which is indeterminate intention, then it could result in an equanimous being reborn into an equanimous realm. So this sankhara has, I think I've pointed out that the manjana has a connection with creativity, how we imagine something and then we create it. And then the sankhara, the creation of karma, has a different kind of a meaning, but a very related meaning. It does have a meaning of a creation. So we are creating one birth after another birth. We are in turning the wheel of samsara, going from life to life, birth and death, going around and around in sankhara. We can see that all the beings and all of the process of life throughout the universe is this continuous cycle which includes creation and destruction. So everything is created. That which is created also comes to an end, comes to its destruction. And because of the nature of the type of karma that beings accumulate, then they come into existence into states that are either pleasant or not pleasant. What we are striving for, if we are striving for liberation, striving for being on the path that accumulates in nibbana, that culminates in awakening, then we seek to come to the end of this cycle of birth and death. And so we've lost interest in creation in the sense that we've lost interest in creating another life for ourselves. The manjana, this conceiving, is a more smaller slice of the general idea of conditionality. And it has to do, in my opinion, with what happens to make something meaningful for us. So you could imagine that I don't suppose you're in a big shopping center and there's so many different stores and so many different things on the shelf with the stores, and you haven't quite made any decisions. You just kind of happen to be there by coincidence. You didn't go there with a particular purpose. And then as you're going along, some particular product catches your eye, and you see something on the shelf, and then it reminds you, oh, I need that. And just then the sort of a cacophony of so many different, kinds of objects on the shelf of the shopping mall, which is a sort of like a jumble with nothing standing out. All of a sudden, it resolves into something where a particular item has a significance. Partly it has a significance in the sense that there's a desire. One may be thinking how much you like that thing, or that dress is really perfect for me. It would look so nice for me. I could go to a party later on and wear that dress or something like that. And it also has to do with the clarity about knowing what to do. So when something becomes meaningful to us, we know what to do about it. And so the mind is become prepared to take some action. And then taking action is involved with creating a karma. So in that way, this manyati, this conceiving, is sort of like the very first arising of the mental side of the activity of the mind, which is going to culminate in taking some kind of action that will have consequences in terms of creating some kind of a subsequent reality. sometimes you see this idea of manana in the suttas as just kind of like sort of more simple, meaning like if the Buddha says, what do you think, O bhikkhus? Is the body permanent or impermanent? That's using the term manyati. So what do you imagine? What's your idea? What is your idea, bhikkhu? What is the body, permanent or impermanent? Now, it could be that the student here never really thought about it. You know, like that question about the permanence of the body is just not something that came to mind before. But then once it comes to mind, once it's pointed out, then they could think about it and say, well, I can see that it's impermanent. So then I get my answer, impermanent, Venerable Sir. And then when we realize that the body is impermanent, then we have a different idea about what to do about the body. If we never thought about it, we could be just going around living our life, eating, sleeping, drinking, walking around, doing things, and it's all just happening just based on, you know, I'm hungry, I want food, I'm sleepy, I want sleep, and so forth like that. Or if we had the idea that the body was permanent, then we might be going to a lot of effort to try to take care of the body and to keep it in perfect condition. Or we might be being like the pharaohs in the ancient times, building a pyramid and arranging for all of our slaves and attendants to be buried with us in the pyramid, with our body being embalmed, and having all of our money and wealth also buried down with us in the pyramid, with our body being eternally preserved because of this belief that the body was permanent. So, according to what an idea comes up, an idea is born in us. Oh, is it permanent or impermanent? So, based on what we decide, what we imagine, we say it's impermanent, and then the teaching goes on from there, that we can see that that which is impermanent is subject to suffering, and that which is impermanent and suffering is unreliable, and therefore should not be identified with. There's a couple of suttas. One is the, well, I'm going to give you this one. Yavakalapi Sutta. I'll give you the citation for this sutta in the chat in case you want to look it up later. In this case, this is a parable. There's an asura or a demon named Vepachiti, and he comes under the bondage of Mara. He's bound by Mara, and then when he thinks, I've been defeated, he's in a battle with the Devas. It's a war between the suras and the asuras. So when he agrees that he's been defeated, then the bonds disappear, and he becomes free. And then he thinks, I'm not defeated, I'm going to beat those suras. And then immediately the bonds reappear and he's bound again. So every time this concept comes up in his mind, then this bond comes up and he's in bondage to death, in bondage to the evil one. So in conceiving, one is bound by the forces of death, by the cycle of samsara, and in not conceiving, one is freed. And then the Buddha explains this further. He gives it examples of what conceiving is. He says, I am is a conceiving, I am this is a conceiving, I shall be is a conceiving, I shall not be is a conceiving, I shall consist of form is a conceiving. That's a reference to being reborn in an existence where you have a physical body. I shall be formless is a conceiving. That's a different realm, thinking of being reborn in that realm. I shall be percipient is a conceiving. I shall be non-percipient is a conceiving. I shall be neither percipient nor non-percipient. And this is practicing kinds of meditation where you have these experiences of a perception like dropping away, very subtle and deep formless forms of meditation, and then conceiving of this as I'm going to take a rebirth in the realm which is like that. The Buddha said conceiving is a disease, a tumor, a dart. Therefore, you should train yourself thus. We will dwell with a mind devoid of conceiving. And then he goes on to give some other qualities related to this conceiving or imagining. He uses the terms for agitation, palpitation, proliferation, and conceit. So it may be that to think of dwelling with a mind empty of conceiving is something that, as a practical matter, we don't really know how to do this. Our mind is an endless fountain of imagination, generating images, generating stories, generating ideas, and it's difficult to see how we could dwell with a mind empty of conceiving, or even what that would come to. My idea is that the hallmark of what this manana, what the Buddha means by conceiving, is a concept which is relevant to me. Even if I'm not being egotistical or filled with desire or filled with hatred or filled with pride, filled with obvious faults, nevertheless, something becomes meaningful when I can bring it in relation to myself. So the temperature in the room feels warm if it's warmer than 98.7 degrees, warmer than this body. If it's colder than 60 degrees, it feels cool, because it's cool in comparison to the temperature of the body. So even being able to have a perception that can make a distinction between warm and cold has got oneself as being like the measurement. Like myself is the ruler by which I measure reality. And then myself not only includes my body, but it also includes my culture. All of the ideas and understandings and assumptions that I have because of being a human being and because of being brought up in the particular environment that I was brought up in. If I encounter a house, or if I imagine a house, if it's some kind of a dirty, filthy, broken place that is moldy and leaking and filled with trash, it's because of my culture that I think it's bad. If I encounter a house that has 8 or 10 bedrooms, and every bedroom has an ensuite bathroom, and it has a jacuzzi and a swimming pool and a man cave in the backyard, and a very elaborate kitchen with very elaborate cooking, and a gigantic screen for watching videos, maybe a separate video room in the basement where you could watch things and so on like that. I might find that house to be bad in a different way, because I would think that house is too luxurious, it's too wasteful. It's wrong for some people to have a house like that. And again, this is in comparison to the cultural background and the assumptions that I have. So it's in comparison, taking myself as the measure, that I come to that judgment. Even at a more another level, okay, here's a picture of Bodhi Hermitage on the morning, and the fog has come in from the ocean, and the creek valley has fog, and the sky is clear. This little creek and the fog and the sun and the sky has been going on for 1,000 years. I wasn't even there. It didn't mean a thing to me. It had nothing to do with me. And yet there was a particular moment in October of 2010 when I was there, and I took the photo, and the moment is very dear to me. It's very delightful to me to think that life could be so simple, that the major news of the day is that the fog comes in the morning and goes away in the afternoon, and that's the entire news of the day. So then something happened in the moment when nature, which is great and large and doesn't really have a concern about me as an individual, but then my perception faculties have made this encounter with these visual forms, and then an experience has been created when the meaning has arisen for me. But even though, like, there's nothing evil in seeing something in nature, it's not really bringing up greed. And nevertheless, a self has arisen together with that experience. So what I'm suggesting for you for the practice for today is that it's not necessary to be worried about trying to get rid of concepts. But if we imagine throughout our mindful practice of the day, noticing when the self arises. It could be like some disturbance comes up, some palpitation, some conceit comes up, some proliferation of some story being arising, and the mind goes off on a tangent thinking, like, that so-and-so always does that to me, or I need to do something to solve this problem, and so forth like that. That's proliferation. Or it could be a conceit of like thinking I'm better than, worse than, equal to. Or it could be just a simple, subtle shift in the mind from being in the stillness of meditation to being disturbed. See if it's possible to notice how with this manana, with this imagining, or with this creation of meaning, that there's also a creation of self. And see if we can catch a hold of a moment where there's a glimpse where the self drops out. And we can just let the sky be the sky. Let the fog be the fog. Forgetting about ourself. To whatever extent you experience this self-conceit as being burdensome and troublesome, seeing if it's possible to reduce the burden, reduce the trouble, reduce the palpitation from worrying about the self, or being emotionally tangled up, and instead being able to let the mind drop that and become more like nature, like the sky, like the fog, experiencing without the self. For those who were not present this morning, I gave a brief meditation idea imagining that one, this is a sutta called Ati Raga Sutta. I'm putting it in the chat in case somebody wants to read it later. This is if desire exists, or if sensual craving exists. You suppose that there's an artist or a painter with some paint, different colors, all colors of the rainbow, and they paint on the wall, a mural, or on a canvas. They create an image of a woman or a man, complete in all the details. And this is compared to the process where there's desire, relishing, and craving of any of the nutriments, whether it be food, contact, or so on. This causes the arising of consciousness, name, and form, and the whole cycle of dependent origination is arising from that, from this delight in this image that we've created. And then the opposite image, if you suppose there's a building, a house, with windows, and the sun rises, and a ray of light enters through the window, and then where does it land? It lands on the wall. I suppose if you painted a mural and the mural was on the western wall, the sun would illuminate the western wall. But if there's no wall, where does it arise? Where does the light land? It lands on the ground. But if there's no ground, where would it land? They say it lands on water. This is based on an image where the solid earth is floating on a sea. And if there's no water, where would it land? And they say it would not land. It would not land anywhere. The light would just be going from the sun, traveling through empty space, and not landing anywhere. So that light would be, if the light emanating from the sun is not landing anywhere, then you don't see the rays of the sun. It's invisible. And then, in the same way, when there's no desire, relishing, or craving for any of the nutriments, then the cycle of dependent arising, the cycle of samsara, doesn't happen. It's ironic we're using imagination to create a word picture, and you can use that word picture to imagine a state where the product of the mind, the creation that you've created, is not landing anywhere, because there's no relishing, no desire for it, because the self has not been created. So this is my reflection for this morning, and I'm going to bring this a YouTube video to a close now. May you have a wonderful day of practice, and come back again this afternoon.